What is up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of the Weekend Roundup here on Touchline Talk. Thank you so much for tuning in. As always, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of the content that is coming out on my channel. Big weekend both in England and Germany. Going to start with the Premier League. Obviously, dramatic turn in the title race with both Liverpool and Arsenal losing. So I want to cover the games individually and then talk about the bigger picture. We'll go with Liverpool first. I mean, yeah, Crystal Palace probably should have had a second. Liverpool should have had at least three. The game ended 1-0. And it's this continuing theme that has developed here, specifically in the Premier League. You go back to the United game and then this one, of their inability to finish their chances. And when you're in a three-team title race and one of those teams is Manchester City, and the other one is, until this game, really flying in attack, you just got to be able to capitalize. It's not like they are playing poorly. Again, Premier League specific, Atalanta game aside. They should have won that game today, as I'm recording this Sunday evening. They should still be right there. And they're not, because they missed chance after chance after chance. And, I mean, Robertson did have to clear a ball off the line. Crystal Palace were good. But if they don't win this title, it is because of the wasted opportunities from a chance creation and failure to capitalize standpoint. Because these games are there for them to take all 3 points, and they're just not doing it right now. And that's also a question that needs to be addressed moving forward in terms of squad construction. Darwin Nunez does a lot of good things. He makes things happen, which you can't always say about every player that steps onto the field. He also wastes a lot of opportunities. Not having Diogo Jota healthy, for the entirety of this season is also part of this. But they're simply not clinical enough in front of that right now. And it could very well cost him a Premier League title. And so now we're in a situation where it looked like Klopp might get this phenomenal conclusion to his tenure at Liverpool. And they won one trophy. At least you thought, okay, maybe they don't win the Premier League, but they got a great shot in the Europa League. And in 4 days, they might have thrown them both away. And at the very least, we are now in a position where it is going to take one or two more Jurgen Klopp miracles for this to end on a happy note. I'm not betting against him. I refuse to do that because that mental fortitude, the unwavering belief, as I've talked about before, is the single defining characteristic of these teams under Klopp, of this era, this Liverpool era. They've done something like they have to do against Atalanta before. They've taken down Manchester City before. But they're not going to do this by just being the best team in England this season. It's going to have some of that magic. Because they just simply are not good enough when you're talking about what Manchester City are doing and what Arsenal are doing. Again, they have done things like this before. It is not over by any stretch of the imagination. But that's the point we're at now because of what has happened this week. It is now back to, can they pull off a miracle? Or maybe two and end up with 2 trophies. But it's going to take at least one for Jurgen Klopp to get to lift silverware one more time as Liverpool manager. Then you got Arsenal. And, I mean, yeah, they created some chances. Villa also scored twice. And had 2 goals that the laws of physics had to be defied, basically, for them to not go in as well. Liverpool outplayed Crystal Palace. You can't necessarily say that against Arsenal. Aston Villa were really, really good. And so here's Unai Emery dealing a massive blow to Arsenal's title hopes. Also uninspiring week overall for Arsenal. And you just look at the magnitude of this to put this in context, right? Liverpool's last loss at home before this week came against Real Madrid in the Champions League. You remember that game? Their last loss before that at home in the Premier League was against Leeds United. They don't lose at Anfield. They lost twice. Combined score, 4-0. Arsenal had not trailed in 2024. They brought that up on the broadcast, if I got that stat correctly. And here they are losing at home to, obviously, a Aston Villa team that's very good and having an excellent season. But, of course, it's their former manager and just all of the context that comes with Unai Emery. So here's what I'll say about the title race overall at this point. I've been consistent. I'm very stubborn about this. That I will not assume anything until it actually happens. Here we are, Manchester City are back in control. And it is worth noting, City do have the easiest schedule, and that was true before this weekend as well. Now, they do have some road games in there. They certainly have games where they could drop points. But now it's back to the place you don't want to be when you're trying to pull the upset, trying to pull this off as the underdog. I talk about this all the time, where you are the one chasing. What made this title race interesting is that City were always trying to catch up and trying to keep pace with Liverpool and Arsenal. Now it's the other way around, which is how City are used to doing this. The good news that I have pointed out today is it's still, right, one draw changes a whole lot. The goal difference is there for the taking. It's not like this is over. But it obviously feels very, very, very different because Liverpool and Arsenal both lost at home on the same day. The other really notable event that happened over the weekend, it's been coming. Bayer Leverkusen are officially Bundesliga champions. I don't have too much to say about this title in and of itself. The accomplishment speaks for itself. They were clearly the best team in the league this season. This is, again, going back to that stubborn conversation. Why I never just concede that whatever team is expected to win, the team with the best, quote-unquote, best squad, the team with the most money, is going to do this. Because you just never know when sometimes, every once in a while, we get an incredible season like this. The other thing I will say, I brought this up before, you need a couple things to go right to beat a team like Bayern Munich to succeed in this kind of situation. What happened last season was that Bayern stooped down to Dortmund's level, and Dortmund couldn't quite rise to the occasion, and we all know what happened on the final game of the season. This, and I said this from the very beginning of the season, that with Harry Kane in that squad, Bayern, not great this season, but they weren't going to stoop down quite the same way. If you were going to beat them, you had to go match and exceed their level. And yes, this is not an all-time great Bayern team, obviously. But that's what Leverkusen did. This is not about Bayern coming back to the pack. This is about Leverkusen lapping everybody. The thing I really want to talk about, though, is the historical context of this season. Because winning the Bundesliga and lifting this trophy was a formality on a journey to much bigger and better things that Leverkusen are trying to accomplish here. We have two teams in the 21st century in the top 5 leagues that have gone undefeated. You've got a Juventus team and obviously the Invincibles. That Juventus team did not play in a European competition and lost in the Coppa Italia final. The Invincibles did not reach the final of the Champions League, the League Cup, or the FA Cup. Bayer Leverkusen are closing in on an undefeated Bundesliga season. Still got some work to do, but they're, most of the way there. They are playing the second worst team in the second Bundesliga in the DFB Pokal final. And they're still hanging out in the Europa League too. This is historic for what they have already done by winning the Bundesliga and getting to celebrate the way that they did today. This could become an unprecedented season, and you can argue and have that conversation about where it fits in, because this was not a great Bundesliga, because they're not playing in the Champions League, because it's not like they're playing Bayern Munich in the DFB Pokal final. That's a conversation for another day. My point simply is they are getting really close to doing something that we have never seen before. At least, and I didn't bother to go back into the 1950s and try and sort through all of that. In the game as we think of it today in the 21st century, the teams that go undefeated, that we remember in these top 5 leagues, they do not have success or pick up other trophies, I should say, because Arsenal did reach semifinals and stuff, the Invincibles. It's not like they immediately got eliminated from everything. But it is so hard to navigate league, domestic cups, European competition. We are close to nobody having done it better than this Bayer Leverkusen team with Xabi Alonso as their manager. And so, to me, yes, it's important to recognize the fact that they actually officially won the Bundesliga and are Bundesliga champions and ended Bayern's streak. The more interesting part, though, is what happens next. Because this really has just started for Leverkusen. It's going to come in a really condensed, short period of time here to see what else they can do. But that's the story over the next month and a half, is where do they go down into the historical context of the sport for potentially doing something that who knows when somebody will be able to do this again. Manchester City don't do this. And yes, you could say it's the Premier League, not the Bundesliga, whatever. They haven't come close to this kind of season. And look, we got to see if Leverkusen can actually pull it off. But every game, every week, they just get closer and closer. So congratulations, incredible story. I talked about Xabi Alonso staying. I've talked some about Bayern Munich. So I really just wanted to have a little bit of a conversation to A, acknowledge that the Bundesliga is officially captured, and then B, talk about the fascinating ending to this and put some perspective around what this Leverkusen team can still accomplish. That is all for the Weekend Roundup. Thank you so much for tuning in. Be sure to hit the subscribe button, and I will see you next time.